All right, good morning, everybody. I want to welcome everyone to our July 2014 SoDA session being streamed live from the Mobile World Center here in beautiful Barcelona, Spain. My name is Chris Bittner, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of SoDA. We are a nonprofit network of some of the best digital agencies and production companies from around the world. We have members in 26 countries on 6 continents. And our organization is really centered around knowledge sharing and collaboration, focused on driving the digital marketing industry forward. Barcelona is really a hub for innovation, technology-driven and otherwise, as well as design. So it's really the perfect backdrop for the conversations we're going to have here today. One on what's next when it comes to design and the creative process as a whole, and the second on connected devices and the Internet of Things. Really focusing on making sure that it becomes an internet of valuable things that can make a real difference in people's lives. So all of our panelists here today are SoDA members and partners from around the world. And we want to welcome them and say thank you once again to the Mobile World Center for hosting us here today in this beautiful facility. And I invite you to learn more about SoDA on sodaspeaks.com. Bueno, bienvenidos otra vez y empecemos ya con la primera conversación sobre el futuro de diseño y proceso creativo. We'll get started now with the first talk on design and the future of the creative process. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Darren David. I'm the CEO of Stimulant. We're based in San Francisco, and I'm joined by my esteemed guest this morning, Enric Godes, who's here locally. Thank you for walking the several blocks over here.
It was easy?
Yes. Matt Griswold from SoDA Creative in Los Angeles, Troy Lachance from Bluecadet in Philadelphia. So this morning we've got an interesting dialogue, which is really what I love to do the most, is hang around with people I like and talk about things that interest me. So I'm just going to get a little bit of peek inside our brains. Our topic for this morning is called What's Next in Design Trends and the Creative Process as a Whole. In order to have a conversation about design, we needed to actually define design. Matt, how do you define design?
Yeah, so I would define design as essentially the interface between the user and the experience that you hope to deliver to them. And that takes it outside of particular executions and whatnot, and it has been addressed in multiple ways as design has kind of evolved. It allows us to look at design as a reflection of play. It allows us to look at user experience. Certainly graphic design has sort of assumed a fair bit of the definition of design, but I think design has more to do with just the visual impact. It really is about shaping the experience and the reflection of understanding how to use something and how to drive greater experience.
Do you think that definition has changed, or do you think it's that we're driving that because we are in a creative field, or do you think that design has evolved and we are now working to do things in a certain way because of what consumers have demanded?
I think design's evolved. I think the craft has evolved, but what is so much more interesting these days, I think, is that the culture of design has evolved from people that are outside of the field. So everyone kind of values and appreciates design now, especially on consumer product level, but just in general with every experience that they're touching. I think that what we're coming into now is an age where design is no longer polished, it's expected, and people understand good design and separate from bad design or no design. I think everybody is now in an era of appreciating and recognizing the value of design.
Troy, you're a company kind of like ours. You do a lot of physical installations, museum work, which is much more on the educational side. Would you agree with that definition? Do you feel it's a similar expectation?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think people do value design a lot more today. They expect a good experience. I think design, for us, encompasses a lot of different fields now. Architecture, environmental graphics, user interface design, and all of those areas of expertise inform the decisions that we make now.
Pace of innovation is increasing logarithmically, and maybe that's a technological thing, but design clearly needs to go to catch up with the technology. If we're talking about where it's going in the future, I think it's kind of important to talk about where we've been. Enric, in your time that you've been doing this as a designer, how have you seen design change from when you started to now?
I don't believe that it actually changed. I mean, the way we see design is it makes people's life easier. So we still keep doing that, So if you take it from that point of view, we're still trying to make people's life easier. So of course, technology is helping us like a lot, and of course, there's more, as you say, conscious about what's good design, and our customers, for instance, they are more educated. They can understand what's good and what's bad. So this makes us to be more challenged every time. Every time we need to perform better. I'm doing the same as I was doing 20 years ago, but with different tools.
I think the tools have definitely gotten better, but I think what we're talking about really is the ecosystem is improving much faster than the tools, or even, the art form can only change so much, but the world in which you reflect it, I think, can change considerably.
Do you feel, Troy, that design is trying to catch up with technology, or that technology is actually powering these sort of new advances in design?
For us, I think the technology just sets the parameters for our design work. And I think that's always the case. I think that's always been the case. With a large touchscreen, the parameters are different than with a responsive website. And you're really just problem solving and trying to connect people with the content and with the story, regardless of what technology or what display you're working with.
You think technology is making our jobs easier, or whether we're struggling to keep up with the advances?
If you say that design is about simplifying things down to necessity and then handing that over as a tool set to the user, then we have to distill down a whole lot more than we ever did to get to that simple experience that is really elegant. So I think our jobs got harder, but at the same time, there's so much greater capability on the end experience of whatever we're creating or designing for that I think we've done a good job at maybe absorbing all of that and simplifying it down so that the experiences are actually getting simpler, better, but the environment in which we're creating them and the tools and technology that we have at our disposal are infinitely more complex than even 5 years ago, really.
This idea that storytelling is being replaced. Storytelling is a sort of a linear narrative, a way to get a message across. And we discussed that that's being replaced with play as sort of the, maybe a metaphor, if you will, for the interactive world and a variety of choices. And what we're trying to create is that moment where people can let go of their conscious brain, let their animal brain take over a little bit, and that's where we can really get ideas into them. But play is something that, as we all know as kids, happened organically, right? It's just play happens. You don't really create play aside from pulling out a game board or going to the place that will facilitate it. What do we as designers do? How are we dealing with this situation today? What are we doing to facilitate play?
You need to give them content like that immediately. Make it more playful, because we have discovered that with interaction, people will learn more things than just being a passive consumer of information. So in a way, we try to make our websites more playful, more dynamic, more interactive, make a gamification of sending information. It's more, hey, I'm delivering you bits and you need to discover what's next, and you can react of the information I'm sending you. If you like to see more, you click here. If not, you can move forward.
We actually kind of are on both sides of play. So we do about half, maybe a little bit more of our business actually in game development and creation. So, and then we take lessons learned there and impart those onto the websites and other things that we do. So in terms of play shaping the experience, I mean, I definitely think it's a way back into the animal brain and a way outside of kind of that noise filter that everyone has justifiably erected. But I also think it's a much more powerful way to speak to people anyway. When we look forward, we're talking to an audience that is now coming up with the expectation that they can change and affect everything in the world around them. And I think that's fantastic. They expect to be able to customize and yes, it's nonlinear, but it's also interactive in a very pure sense of the word. Like, just coining the phrase, but I mean, they expect to be able to shape the experiences that they're getting. And I think play is our lens onto how to design experiences for that. And a few keys would be that The feedback loops definitely is a core concept that comes out of play that you don't have in linear narrative. I also think the focus on the player and making sure that they're empowered. It's really about empowering the end player is where play and narrative, I think, differ. And so, you can use those on a website. You can use those in a very literal game. You can use those really in any sort of communication, but it's incumbent upon us as designers, I think, to make sure that we are designing for the player rather than designing for the brand and just sort of couching it through, a term.
Seems that play can be very subjective. What some people find playful, other people find droll. Do you have any tools or secrets for ensuring when you're designing an experience for play, for knowing that it's going to be universally acceptable? Like, do you know in the design process, this is going to be it, this is the one, and things in your toolbox that you always come back to?
Well, I think one of the challenges of designing play, and especially on the game side, is that it's a real ephemeral thing. So you don't have it until you have it. So our toolbox is chock full of iteration, much more so than even in other mediums where we're developing. Like, iteration's great and serves UX and everything, but when you're trying to find fun, you have to just keep chipping away and tracking it from different things. So the toolbox is full of iteration, I would say, feedback loops, definitely. We talk more about macro feedback loops and whatnot now as well. And so I think that we're always just sort of iterating to try and find out where this is fun. In terms of validating it, I think that's what's really interesting, and it's a puzzle for us, which I think is really rewarding at the end of the day. That nobody will agree on what is great and what's not great. At the end user, people still have preferences, between loving that game or not loving that game. But for us, we know when we get to the fun, and the path to get there is cumbersome and hard.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. For us, I would stress the iteration. I think that's really important. We prototype early and often, and I'm kind of curious with the panel what role does prototyping take, and when does that happen in the process of a project? Sometimes with our projects, the prototyping happens totally separate from the actual client engagement. One of our developers might come up with a really interesting UI solution, just playing around in their spare time, and we think it's great, and we'll take that and apply it to a client project. I'm kind of curious, how much of that happens, with you guys.
Yeah, I would say oftentimes we're dealing with prototypes that just end up looking better until they launch. Like, where, especially on the game development track, like, it is just a prototype after a prototype, and it starts with development. It starts with ugly boxes, and then turns into slightly better boxes. But it's just a series of prototypes until eventually it launches, which is a hard lesson actually for us to learn, because we came out of, we've been doing games for 12 years, but we've also been doing websites and other things in a much more traditional waterfall sense. So we came out of a world where you design everything perfectly, and then you sit down and try and get development to match that one-to-one. Right. Now I think developers are in a better place. They're actually leading the charge on that, and a lot of the innovation is starting in development through prototyping.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So what we have found is you can use successful experiences into new projects. I mean, that's obvious, of course, but since we're a cross-media studio, we're using things that we have learned from, I don't know, for instance, from making games to doing websites to, using that experience in making animation. For instance, let me show you an example. A few years ago, we did a website for a language school. I mean, it's a place where you go there, you sign on, and you can see all the lessons. You have the whole site, the entire site for you, and it was not really working. I mean, people go there, they see one lesson, they see another lesson, and it was kind of okay. But suddenly we turned into a game. You go there, you have this score, and then you can see the whole lesson. You need to unblock one lesson, and then you get, your score gets higher, and then you keep in developing in the experience of learning foreign language. And it was really more attractive for our end users to see this as a game, as adopting some of the game features into a website where people are supposed to learn. It was, as I say, more richer, and the people stay longer than the other way around.
I think it's important to hit on this gamification thing, because that is a buzzword that did a really good job of self-propagating, and it is different than play. I would say it's a subset system of play. It's closer in spirit to like the feedback loops that we have than to the mode of communication, if you will. So there's a lot of interest, I guess, in sort of like, oh, let's take this terrible thing and find a way to gamify it, and that's going to make it better. That's not going to work. It's already shown not to work. But when you take something that's already great and you say, well, how can we use these sort of invitation mechanisms to draw people in, then I think you get a tremendous incremental return to come at it from play. But the end goal should not be to sort of like feel that we can take systems that work in one design or in one medium and say, well, how can we port this over to our health insurance policies? Like, no, the core of it still has to be playful for anything that's in that way to be able to port across and to be leveraged, I think.
An interesting point I'm seeing coming out of this discourse is, at least just now, in our lifetime, in the lifetime of social media, which is very short, we've seen companies who have quote unquote cracked the code, right, on how to get you to click on something. It's the numbered list, it's the the hyperbole, it's like they've more or less figured out how to get you to click through to something. There's a formula. They cracked the code. When we talk about the future of design, and particularly around play, do you think at some point someone will understand this is universally playful and all design is going to gravitate towards that? Or do you think that our process is always going to be, well, we'll know when we see it? Because it always seems like there's almost a bit of play involved in getting to play. Is that inherent in play itself? Or do you think that there are certain, universally held beliefs that we'll be able to fall back on?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So what we tell the studios is that our lens on the world, the way we view things in many times problems is through play. It's how we create is through play, and the byproduct of that is often play. Sometimes it's not, but will we get to a point where there's just sort of like a nuts and bolts, we crack the code and this is how to get there? I don't feel like we will. We personally won't, because as soon as it becomes rote, then I think that it's incumbent upon us to challenge that. As soon as everyone is doing something the same way, I tend to think that the opportunity is to the contrarians at that point. That we could. I hope that we enter a world where everything is just so damn playful and fun that it's tough to get your message across any other way, and so we have to sort of re-challenge it. I think we're a long way off. I think we have a lot of work left to do, but if everyone cracks the code in the right direction, then there'll still be opportunity for the contrarians to start moving things the other direction.
Is it fair to say that that's our job as digital agencies, is to come up with the thing that hasn't been done before? I mean, our clients are looking for differentiation, right? So
absolutely. I mean, we need to understand, people's demand. Take, for instance, one of these, you guys know this stupid application, Yo, where the only thing you need to is you just Yo other people.
I use it daily.
It's the most stupid thing I ever have seen, but it's amazing. I mean, they understand one important thing, which is context. I mean, so far we're developing things that it's going to be you're at your home, your desktop or whatever, and checking this. No, this works everywhere. You're here. You're sending some stuff to other people. I was reading that they're using that for when Israel is bombing or whatever. They're sending Yos to the people just as a base to alert other people, right? So I guess these guys are good in understanding the context of this application is going to be used. we're not doing more stuff only for desktop. We're not doing websites that work everywhere. We need to understand where this content is going to be consumed. And I think this is super important. And those companies who understand that will succeed in the near future.
Yeah, I think context is a huge,
Yeah.
underappreciated opportunity.
Yeah.
And have you found it sort of tough to pull that into traditional web design experience?
Yeah.
I mean, because you don't get a whole lot of that context by default. You do in a mobile context, maybe, but
I guess you need to, you need to. I mean, it's one of the things to check, right? I mean, when my users are consuming this information, because before that it was easy. I mean, corporate thing, 8 to 5, leisure stuff, 5 to 11. That's it. I mean, this is all the context we need to learn. Now people are, sending messages while they're going to have a coffee. Even here, you guys are some of you are texting. So it's
no, not this crowd.
no, of course not. But people who isn't at the homes watching us, they're using applications. So it's super important. I mean, for instance, take how the media. I mean, the newspapers are changing. BuzzFeed, for instance, they don't care about home. People are not going to the website using the home. They're coming through the content. So they publishing this stupid list of 30 things you need to know before 13, and people are getting the content on their Facebook or wherever while they're in commute, checking what's going on, and that's it. They have consumed a piece of information they want. No one is actually going to the website to see what's going on, right? So also context is coming through you. It's not that you're pulling them, it's pushing to your devices.
Yeah, I think this is where the next panel really kind of folds into this, where you need the sensors are going to shape the future of that context for the world.
Absolutely.
A lot of those sensors don't necessarily feed into some of the stuff that we're doing at the moment, like mobile web or any web. But when we look at a world of more valuable connected things, that's really going to just increase it that much.
Absolutely, yeah.
Troy, I know we kind of roll in a different world where we're working in space and large touchscreens and stuff. How do you see context changing in the future? Do you think that digital installations, experiential technology in spaces, I mean, where there is a defined context, right? You can't take it with you. Do you think that spaces are going to become more important, or do you think they're going to become less important in the future because everything is available everywhere?
I think they'll become more important in the future. I think context is hugely important, particularly when you're designing for a space. When someone walks into a museum, they're expecting a particular experience. So you have to make sure you design for that experience. When they walk into a corporate lobby or an airport, that context is really important, and you need to make sure you design for that experience. When they're walking through an airport terminal, they don't want to spend 20 minutes digging through some content. But when they're in a museum, they might be more apt to spend a little time at a kiosk to understand a little bit more about an artifact.
I definitely agree. I mean, I think that spaces are the sort of the last frontier. As location becomes less important for creating content, having places where there's stuff that you can get nowhere else. You can't get it at home, you can't get it at work, you can't get it on a device, right? Technology becomes a way to actually create importance for spaces. And why would I actually go to this place? Because there is an experience there that I can't get anywhere else.
That's funny. A lot of our museum clients will come to us with an idea what they want and a suggested technology, and a lot of times they'll suggest iPads in the space. And we always suggest alternate solutions because everyone has an iPad in their living room. So we will usually suggest a larger touchscreen that people don't have in their living room, so that they kind of have an experience that they wouldn't normally get.
We've done a similar thing with, you take a 16:9 screen, if you just turn it portrait, it doesn't look like a TV anymore,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
It's a
Right.
simple tweak,
Yeah.
but you realize,
Yeah.
oh, that's not what I have in my living room. It's just a little bit
Right.
off kilter. So,
And
point.
it's interesting because you guys are in this space where space is so incumbent on the product. I'm curious to know, with what Hendrik was saying about context, are you able to, or do you see that more personal context is coming into the experiences that you guys create? Because the spatial context is kind of, it's not given, it's well shaped, but you guys are already well ahead, I think, on that because you have a space fixed into the context of what you're creating. Are you now looking to bring personal context into the experiences that unfold there?
I think that's always the dream, but adults don't like to fail in public, and people certainly don't enjoy sharing personal information in public spaces. So, we're right on that edge of when your personal device can seamlessly blend with technology in a space. We're not there yet. I mean, there's some sort of beachheads into that territory, but people are very comfortable in their personal bubble on a device. And we're trying, in terms of personalization, I see that there's more opportunity to create experiences that are aware of you specifically and might react to you and might do something different when Troy walks up than when you walk up, Matt. So that in the sense is kind of the personalization, but it's less about actually knowing who you are and more just responding to how you behave differently. And that in itself, I think, is kind of more the opportunity for personalization, at least today. In the future, since we're talking about the future, I hope that those would be much more blended. And we're also seeing a shift in just generationally what people are okay with. Our generation and older, we still have some concerns about privacy and those kinds of things. And millennials and so on and so forth, at least as far as the stats go, they're willing to opt in and give as much information. They want to be a part of the experiment.
Yeah.
So it seems that a lot of how we think about design as a whole needs to change, moving forward as more and more people are willing to, part with their personal information for a very, very personalized experience.
Well, that's the thing, is that they're often said to be sort of like free to the wind, that they just have no regard for their privacy. But I think what we're actually seeing out of millennials is a value exchange that they're comfortable with, which is they're comfortable with getting the automatic drive report from Google because Google knows absolutely where they are at any given point. Yeah. That value exchange is not comforting to maybe an older generation, but the millennials are very happy with personalization in exchange for a certain degree of privacy. And I think we're going to have to design, with that kind of personalized context and spatial context and whatnot. I think that's probably, I like the word beachhead. That's probably the next beachhead for design, is to really start thinking about, okay, well, MIT's doing some amazing work around physical screens that actually change form over time, right? That kind of sci-fi stuff that we love. I think we have to start thinking about, we tend to be more on the software layer and whatnot, where that changes dynamically based on, have we seen this person before, or where are we, or what is the context of this use? That's going to be a really interesting world of design, because it's not about finding that one strict solution that boils everything down, but it's what is the right solution for this person right now. And admittedly, I don't think that we've done an amazing job at that as an industry at this point. It's very tough to figure out who owns that and how does that evolve and how do we control for this. How the hell do you get that approved? I don't know. But I think that's where we need to go.
I think what you said before, like, are people concerned about, the personal data being, with these big organizations knowing more about us? I believe in the few years, in next years, it will become less an issue and more like an advantage. Like, you take Netflix, you're watching something, at the end, he knows exactly what you need, what you want to see, because he's understanding the way you consume audiovisual products. So I guess it will be pretty much the same. I mean, I'm visiting a website, and I'm going to a different website, and the banners I'm seeing here are, from the other website. It's just scary the first time. So, okay, how these guys know, what I like or whatever. But so at some point you say, okay, if I have to see some banners. I would rather prefer to see the banners of things that interest me more than just random stuff. So I think at some point, I mean, you go to the doctor, you explain all your issues to your doctor because it's your health consultant. There will be this figure of data consultants that you won't be afraid of, okay, let him know what you like, what you don't like. So the information you will have at the end, it will be just tailor-made for you.
Well, we're getting near the end. I wanted to give everyone a chance. We're talking about the future. I've heard a lot of things. We're talking about play being important. We're talking about context and context sensitivity. We're talking about place. In 5 years from now, as creatives doing what we're doing, assuming we're still doing this, we haven't completely devolved and run off to Barcelona.
Seems like a good idea.
What is the biggest change you think we will see in how we do what we do 5 years from now? And another way you can answer that is, what's the biggest problem you have today with what you do that you think we will no longer have to deal with in 5 years? Troy?
Well, I think a couple things. I really like what Matt was saying about bringing personal information into public space and that being the next beachhead. I think that is going to be the case. I think our clients, like you said, are often resistant to the idea of bringing personal information into a public interactive. But I think maybe we need to do a better job of explaining the value proposition that's inherent in that for visitors. In terms of process, I think in the last few years we talked about we've had to switch from a waterfall process to a more iterative prototyping process. And that's been really challenging. I think that's going to continue to evolve. And like Matt was saying about developers getting a much more important role in the creative direction of a project. I think that's going to continue to develop, and I think we're going to see a greater need for developers who can think visually and creatively and contribute to a project on a high level.
Matt?
Yeah, I think those roles are going to break down.
Like the creative coder that we have today?
Yeah, I think it's the creative coder to the power of 10. I mean, on two fronts, you see the talent front coming up is, we get a lot of people that want to come work for us, and you say, great, what do you do? And it's like, everything? Well, you can't be a jack of all trades. Oh shit, this portfolio is actually really amazing. Yeah. So I'm always a diehard fan of specialization, but you're seeing that specialization now is about types of end product more than it is about the inputs to that. And I think that's really interesting for the talent base and some of the schools that are bringing up just an incredible new group of talent. So I guess my 5-year prediction would be sort of a studio-looking thing. I think we're going to see a much more intermixed group of talents and how those come to bear on the product. You're going to see developers that are just as much design thinkers as your UX people, and the UX people are going to be validating things. There's still going to be room for hyper-specialization, but I think that core groups will be able to drive the end product in a very different way than we experience now. Now we sort of figure out, well, how do we fight the tendency for waterfall? How do we bring people together and then be more iterative? I think the talent is kind of refactoring in a way that'll just seem obvious five years from now.
I was a bit scared about this question because I'm not sure how to answer it properly. I mean, I'm pretty much sure if what we have seen in the past, having we are cross-media studio, so every time we're having more skills, people who do different talents, as you say, people who do a bit of everything will be increasing. So this was a trend in the past. It's going to be a trend in the future. But at the end, what we do is we do client work. I mean, let's face it. Whatever we want to do, it depends on our client's brief. And what we are seeing is the client's attitude is changing. And this is good for the business. I mean, this allows us to do more more daring proposals, more stuff which is different. So in my best dreams, the clients will be keep on doing that, be more aggressive, be more educated in terms of digital, in terms of creativity, and this allow us to have more room for develop ourselves. Because most of the times, we show our clients, hey, we can do this, and say, yeah, it's a cool idea, but I don't know. We live with this fear. So especially young clients, they don't care. I mean, they say, okay, let's try, let's do it. My hope is in the next years to come, we will see more of this attitude from the side of the clients.
Well, I'm all for all of that. I think we're out of time, so I'll thank our panelists, Troy Lachance from Bluecadet, Matt Griswold from SoDA Creative, Enric Godes from Vasava. I'm Darren David from Stimulant, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Darren.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.